1, 2, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Nong song sam si ha. Good afternoon to you, ladies and gentlemen. A very tricky day at the office is set to be had by all as we continue with the UK Kart Series campaign. It's round 5 of the 2025 season. It's been a very busy one so far here at Rowrah in the gorgeous Cumbrian countryside. Not that you would call it gorgeous today. The rain and the wind has made it very, very difficult indeed out there for the competitors. They're going to make a very tricky race battle of it out there on the course. It is very wet, very greasy, very slippery. And of course, with the rain and the wind out on the circuit, it's going to be more difficult than it's ever been for our contenders to get themselves up to speed. But as always, we've got 6 races to come in our finals over the course of the afternoon. We've already had some big performers in each of the categories. The mighty Bambino category combined will have the Honda Cadet 200s, the Junior Pro Kart Extremes, the Honda R200, the Senior Pro Karts, and the BWRs and BWR Juniors. They'll combine together. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the UK Kart Series coverage. Jake Sanson in the commentary box once again here in very difficult conditions indeed. Ironically enough, last week it was bikes on the circuit. This week it is karts. So we've traded 2 wheels back to 4. Last week we had some big difficulties with fog, mist and rain. Well, guess what? We've got problems with rain, not so much mist and fog yet. Hopefully it's not going to creep in though over the course of the last 90 minutes of the weekend. So let's bring you up to speed with the lay of the land going into these last 6 races of the weekend. So far, it's been one-way traffic in the mighty Bambino Coma qualifying and race heats for young Elliot Hitch. He has been the dominant force as the contenders go for their exploratory lap. And of course, we got the mighty Bambinos battling away for position. In fact, I think we may have actually just started the race. I do apologize as the mighty Bambino Coma competitors charge their way into position. Yes, the timer has started. So we've got Elliot Hitch, Harry Voss, Stanley Thurston, Max Tetlow, Oliver Reynolds, and Arthur Etherington making their way through the course. And it has been one-way traffic all the way for Elliot Hitch. Now the Bambino Comas get underway with Jensen O'Connor out in front of Archie Mostyn, Buddy Dorr, Alfie Ward, Noah Gallagher, Rafe Verdi, Jace Hannon, Logan Grassi, and Max West. There's been a bit of a spin into the first chicane, I do believe, for the first contenders. So it's already been a very interesting one for the drivers in the Bambino Coma race. But so far, so good for Elliot Hitch. He really has been the master of his own destiny so far in the Mighty category. He's hoping to get some more points on the board. Harry Voss, Stanley Thurston, Max Tetlow, Oliver Reynolds, and Arthur Etherington hoping to close him down. But Elliot Hitch has been one-way traffic over the course of this meeting so far. And so he's going to continue as best as he possibly can to keep the ball rolling. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. You won't miss a single broadcast in the UK Kart Series campaign in 2025. There's already some big pressure coming off the final turn as Stanley Thurston, I think that is trying to put some pressure on the 56 of Harry Voss. And they are both trying to close up on Elliot Hitch. Meanwhile, further back over the line in P4, that is Max Tetlow ahead of Arthur Etherington. And then we've got Oliver Reynolds trying to chase them down. So this is the battle for P2. This is Harry Voss and Stanley Thurston at the moment. So those two are currently dueling away for position, trying not to get too far wide out of McRae's. Then they will work their way back down the straight up towards the hairpin at Iredale's. But certainly Elliot Hitch has been absolutely sublime so far. Fastest in qualifying, winner of Heat 1, Heat 2, and Heat 3. So this is going to be a perfect domination for him if he gets his way. But even Stanley Thurston is struggling to keep up with Harry Voss at the moment in the battle for second place. Max Tetlow, then Arthur Etherington and Oliver Reynolds. Meanwhile, in Bambino Coma, it is Archie Mostyn who has got himself into the lead of the race. So very impressive work indeed there from Archie Mostyn to get ahead of Jensen O'Connor and the W plate of Alfie Ward. There is Elliot Hitch, your race leader. Harry Voss, second place. He's now pulling well clear of Stanley Thurston, who has tried his best to stay with the leading duo, but there isn't really a lot that the number 28 Stanley Thurston could do to stay with them. He goes through St John's and into Sunny. You can see there's a lot of standing water at the various crevices on the course. You get a little bit of elevation change as the course changes its dynamic over the course of proceedings. But certainly for the moment, Hitch leads Voss and Thurston. The top 3, no problem at all. Very exciting performance from the drivers behind the wheel, although in terms of the wheel-to-wheel duels, there don't appear to be any for Hitch, Voss and Thurston, having a very easy time of it indeed, and that certainly makes life a little bit easier for our contenders. But out in front, Elliot Hitch has gone into the 1:19s now for lap times. That is almost a second and a half quicker than anybody else can manage. Only Harry Voss can stay relatively close to him, but in the wet conditions, this is all about confidence. You've got to try and put yourself further forward up the ranks. It's not just about going quickly. In the wet conditions, you can set a fast lap time and you can bin it into the drink. You've got to keep the consistency and the rhythm at a decent level, particularly when you're in the Bambinos, and that looks like a spin there. I think that was Max Tetlow having a bit of an issue. I'll double check, but I'm worried that might have been Harry Voss actually. So Elliot Hitch is still out in first position, enjoying himself. We need to look back in the Bambino Coma category. So there goes Elliot Hitch. It was Harry Voss who spun off, so I thought it was Max Tetlow, but in fact, it's Harry Voss. He's dropped back now right into the clutches of Stanley Thurston once again. Now, fortunately, he seems to have been able to recover, so Stanley Thurston is not quite through into second position. Apologies if your screen is not quite showing the facts. I know my monitor is having some difficulties in these treacherous weather conditions here, but certainly for the moment, it is Elliot Hitch who is leading Stanley Thurston and Harry Voss, who are dueling away over second position. For the moment, it does look as though Voss is slightly out in front of Stanley Thurston, though. These are such difficult conditions for our drivers to face here at Rowrah. 7 minutes and 10 seconds still on my timing screen, plus the additional lap that goes with it, of course, naturally. So Elliot Hitch's best lap is a 1:19.927. The next best from anybody is from Harry Voss, who's done a 1:21.2. Jensen O'Connor has done a 1:21.4 to get within 0.2 of a second of Archie Mostyn. So that could be worth picking up later. There is Stanley Thurston running again in third position, trying to stay with Harry Voss, although I actually think Stanley Thurston might now be through into second place, trying to see where Harry Voss is in relation. So Elliot Hitch has come through already with a lap time of a 1:19.4, so he is definitely going quicker than everybody else in the mix. Second across the line, it is Stanley Thurston, so Harry Voss seems to have made another mistake out there on the course and has dropped back into what is hopefully only third position. It is third. He crosses the line now 3.6 seconds back from Stanley Thurston. So difficult in these weather conditions, but it's going to be very tricky to see how everything continues here at Rowrah. 1:21.16 for Stanley Thurston now, a 1:21.2 for Harry Voss, although he did have a little bit of a slip up on the last lap. There is Thurston, now running in second. Look back, and then we should see Harry Voss. There he is. So Harry Voss on his way to Iredales. He'll be running up towards Lakeside, trying to get that gap down. But again, once the confidence starts to slip in the wet conditions, it can mean all sorts of difficulties. And that's one of the back markers there, spinning in front of Stanley Thurston. I think that might have been Logan Grassi. For a lot of these guys, this is still them learning about how to get the most out of the kart. And many of them will not have raced in wet conditions as treacherous as this before. So they're still learning where the kart goes. This is one of the many small independent run championships, as it were, rather than the national grade championships. So this is very much drivers learning how to get the most out of themselves and the kart, as Stanley Thurston puts a lap on what I believe is Logan Grassi. We'll double check as they come through at the line. So crossing the line now, it is actually Max West. So Max West has come through in behind Stanley Thurston, but ahead of Harry Voss for the moment. So Max West then ahead, and of course we are waiting for Jace Hannon and Logan Grassi to come through to complete their fourth lap. Meanwhile, Elliot Hitch is already on his sixth lap at the moment. So it shows you the difference in pace between these drivers. But at Bambino, we would expect there to be quite a variation in pace, because, of course, these drivers are literally at the start of their racing career. Jensen O'Connor, by the way, has got ahead of Archie Mostyn and moved into fourth place overall, with Mostyn joining him to get ahead of Max Tetlow and Oliver Reynolds. So the pace is definitely with O'Connor at the moment ahead of Mostyn. It is Jensen O'Connor's lap time of a 1:20.998 that he set on the last lap. That is the quickest of the drivers in Bambino Coma, and definitely getting closer to the mark set by Elliot Hitch in the Might E category. But Archie Mostyn is not too far away from that mark either, a 1:21.9. So he has got some decent lap times on the board, but we would expect a big variation in the lap times, as I said before, from Bambino, Coma, and Might E, because these guys are literally at the start of their racing careers. So some of them are as young as 4 years of age when they go into Bambino racing. You'll typically get these guys racing between the ages of about 6 and 8 at this level. Oh, and a spin on the way through the first chicane, but a good recovery there by one of the back markers. Now, I would guess that's Buddy Dorr, who's just crossed the line in front of Stanley Thurston. So Buddy Dorr has lost the back of the cart, but manages to recover it. And so Buddy Dorr looks like he's going to be the next one to be lapped here by Stanley Thurston, who's currently second in the Might E category. Good engineering, of course, from the Might E carts then, because, of course, this proves that even in the wet conditions, these electric-driven motors that we have in the Might E category definitely giving these youngsters great pace out there on the course. I wonder if that's Max West about to be lapped a second time, because Logan Grassie's just come across the line. Jace Hannon's already gone through the picture, I believe. So out of the Stuart S's, waiting to see when Stanley Thurston is going to pounce and make his move. He doesn't want to trip over any back markers, especially now he's running as high as second position. But trying to pitch your way through the traffic is quite a tricky task, with Elliot Hitch out in the lead by 10.9 seconds. Interestingly enough, though, the fastest lap of the race has come from Elliot Hitch, a 1:19.452, and Stanley Thurston has set exactly the same lap time to the 1,000th of a second. Is this UK Kart Series, or is it F1 in schools? Very close indeed as they run close together. The blue flag flies for the back markers. Now, they are, of course, learning what all these flags mean at this age, because they are only 6 to 8 years of age. But what you have to remember, of course, as well, is that in karting, when the blue flag waves, the onus is actually on the driver behind, usually, to get past the kart in front. You don't really expect the slower kart to move aside and get out of the way. The whole purpose is that the faster kart has got to do the overtaking, because for the slower kart, they need to remain predictable. If they start weaving and swerving around, trying to get out of harm's way, they can actually cause more harm than good, because if the movement is misinterpreted by the kart behind, it is always likely to cause some difficulties. So 1:19.452 from both of our leading men, Elliot Hitch and Stanley Thurston. Harry Voss still there in third position. If you get a spinner, that was Buddy Dorr. So Buddy Dorr losing the kart there through the Stuart S's, manages to recover, but it's another difficult slip up for him. So easily done in these conditions. Don't expect too much perfection from these 6 to 8 year olds, even the ones at the front end of the field that know a little bit about driving these karts. These conditions are going to catch out anybody. They are very slippery indeed. Just over a minute to go, plus the additional lap. The Mighties and the Bambino Comas finishing off in fine style then. They'll complete the race duration on the times. Blue flag flies then for Rafe Verdi and Arthur Etherington. Not entirely sure why, because Verdi and Etherington are actually racing each other for position. So I wonder if that was a misinterpretation there, because they're running in different categories. I did notice that the blue flag flied and then it stopped flying straight away. So I think it might have been very easy to mistake a kart there for a back marker when it was actually racing the other machine for position. So we've got Elliot Hitch out in front, Stanley Thurston second from Harry Voss. Then the leader in Bambino Coma is in P4. That's Jensen O'Connor ahead of his main rival, Archie Mostyn. Max Tetlow, P6, in front of Oliver Reynolds. Then Noah Gallagher, Alfie Ward, and rounding up the top 10 is Rafe Verdi. And then we have Arthur Etherington in front of Buddy Dorr, Jace Hannon, Max West, and Logan Grassie. All 15 drivers who started the race are still running it. So it's all going very well indeed for the contenders at the moment. And we're going to see a really solid battle for all of our competitors here at Rowrah. The time has ticked down to 0, so we've run out of time on our timing screen. So when Elliot Hitch crosses the line to complete his 9th lap, there he goes now. He will go into the last lap of the competition. So Stanley Thurston trying to stay with him there. He's actually got the gap down from what was about 10 seconds to 7.8 seconds. So Stanley Thurston is actually lapping the course quicker than Elliot Hitch right now, but with 8 seconds in hand, surely Elliot Hitch can just cruise home and not worry too much about Stanley Thurston there in second position. He's on his way to a final victory that would absolutely confirm him as the King of Cumbria, out through the hairpin at Iredales along Lakeside, and having been the fastest driver in qualifying and then taking the victory in Heat 1, Heat 2 and Heat 3. He is now about to complete the run. Oh, and up in front of him, a little bit of a spin there from one of the drivers in Bambino Coma. I think that might have been Max West, who spun around there into the Stewart-S. Is so easy to do at this level. Got to remember, these guys are just 6 to 8 years of age. I warrant anybody else to have done better than these guys at a similar timeline in their racing life. This is not easy in greasy conditions such as this at Rowrah. But the checkered flag is going to come down now for Elliot Hitch, who has driven an absolutely perfect weekend. The last lap board is out, but now it's going to be replaced by the checkered flag as here comes Elliot Hitch. Pole position, race 1, race 2, race 3, and the final. Perfect domination of the weekend then for Elliot Hitch. Very deserved indeed. Second place for Stanley Thurston. He can be quite happy with that, only 7 seconds adrift. And then coming through for third position, it is set to be Harry Voss, who will finish off the run. Good job from all three, and they will take away some much-deserved silverware from the competition. If we look back, we're going to get to see the victor in Bambino Coma. It's been close all the way until the closing stages, when Jensen O'Connor has managed to pull 3 seconds clear on Archie Mostyn. Out of the final turn comes Jensen O'Connor, and he will pick up the victory in Bambino Coma. There is Archie Mostyn. He comes through for 5th position overall and 2nd in the category. Max Tetlow is going to come through for P6 in front of Noah Gallagher, who, if he stays in front of Alfie Ward, will complete the podium in the Bambino Coma final. We've still got a few karts coming through. Look at the camera lens. You can see how difficult the conditions are here, because the right side of that camera lens is completely fogged up in the drizzly conditions here. Thank goodness, however, it's still showing the rest of the racetrack. So the competitors come through to take the checkered flag. Alfie Ward is the first one home between him and Noah Gallagher. So Gallagher must have had a spin on the final lap. Very unfortunate indeed. Oliver Reynolds comes through now for 4th position. And across the line to take the checkered flag, that's Rafe Verdi. So I wonder if Tetlow and Gallagher actually pulled into the pits to complete the race before the time they crossed the line. Well, very difficult, as all of the karts have now made it back into the paddock. Here is the provisional result then. Elliot Hitch taking the victory in the mighty Bambinos ahead of Stanley Thurston and Harry Voss. The Bambino Comas is clinched by Jensen O'Connor, whose fastest lap was only half a second slower than that of Hitch and Thurston in Mighty. Archie Mostyn P5 in front of Alfie Ward to complete the Bambino Coma podium, and then Oliver Reynolds ahead of Max Tetlow, Noah Gallagher, and then Buddy Dorr, Arthur Etherington, Rafe Verdi, Jace Hannon, Max West, and Logan Grassi. They all managed to finish the race, but not all of them having completed the 10-lap duration. So a good performance then from Elliot Hitch ahead of Stanley Thurston and Harry Voss, with Jensen O'Connor, Archie Mostyn, and Alfie Ward picking up the top 3 positions in the Bambino Coma category. So as you can see, the weather's still very tricky here at Rowrah in Cumbria, on the rather picturesque circuit that has given us so many great duels in micro-sized motorsport over the years, both in karting and in bikes. But here it's going to be a very tricky one. We move on to the Honda Cadet 200 final next up. It's been very one-way traffic indeed in the initial stages for the likes of Henry Colborne, but he has had some opposition over the course of the weekend from young Bradley Sutton, who's definitely pulled out the stops to be competitive whenever it requires to be. So Henry Colburn and Bradley Sutton have essentially been exchanging the pleasantries for the entirety of the weekend. Heat 1 in the Honda Cadet 200 category was taken by Bradley Sutton. Then later on, we had the second one that was taken by Henry Colborne, and Bradley Sutton then grabbed Heat 3 victory once again. So we think it is definitely going to be Sutton versus Colborne. So the drivers will line up in position. It's going to be Bradley Sutton and Alistair Saunders, though, on the front row of the grid. Saunders more consistent. Then Colborne and Nikita Roberts, Jaden Bond, Phoebe Shelton, Oscar Wills, and Ollie Knox. So let's get into race positions. We're waiting for the command at the back of the field. And when we go to battle, all of our drivers will be ready to charge, and we do so now. Good start from Sutton. Saunders is going to get a little bit of a nudge as we go into the first couple of corners. Nikita Roberts getting held up on the way through the first couple of corners there, and that is really frustrating considering she started from the second row of the grid. Had good pace initially this weekend, but the 63 getting caught out there on the way through the first couple of corners, and we got contact. 2 karts coming together there. Now I'm trying to look through my monitors to see which 2 drivers that was, because at the moment the pictures are a little bit tricky to follow in the wet conditions. Up the inside, we're going to get another neat couple of battles here up at the sharp end of the field. Green flags are flying on Lakeside at the moment. But Bradley Sutton wants a decent race here from Saunders, and then Nikita Roberts and Henry Colburn. That's how they got out of the blocks. I wonder if Colburn has been able to make up any of the time that was initially lost out on the circuit. We're certainly waiting for Sutton and Saunders to complete the first lap as they go up the crest into Paddock Bend and then shoot down the stretch and up the run to the next climb. It is going to be Sutton ahead of Colburn. So the two main protagonists are together, then Saunders, and then Nikita Roberts in P4. Ahead of Phoebe Shelton, who is no longer in 5th position. She's now got Jaden Bond and Oscar Wills ahead of her. So the race battle continues as they go out of McRae's and down towards Iredale's. 10.5 minutes to go. And Henry Colburn is definitely giving Bradley Sutton a run for his money down Lakeside, up towards the hairpin at Stewart for the first time, and then in through the Stewart S's. Very tricky part of the course, this in greasy conditions. You hit a wet patch at exactly the wrong moment. It's going to do you no end of good, and that's a collision there for Phoebe Shelton. So Phoebe Shelton has clattered into the side of her opponent there. I think that might have been Oscar Wills, and now they're still going wheel to wheel as they charge back into opposition on the way down towards the hairpin at Iredale's. Having clattered into each other at McRae's, they almost do the same thing again at Iredale's, overshooting there. Bradley Sutton leads Colburn and Saunders, then it is Nikita Roberts in P4, and then we have Jaden Bond, but Oscar Wills and Phoebe Shelton, despite clattering into each other, they have been able to keep going. So Jaden Bond is now in P4. Where is Nikita Roberts? Oh, don't tell me Nikita Roberts was the one caught out there with Phoebe Shelton. I wonder if they accidentally tagged into each other when they spun, because we're waiting for Oscar Wills to come through and complete the lap. And Nikita Roberts and Phoebe Shelton have not yet. So Henry Colburn versus Bradley Sutton. Very close run things going on between these two. Well, Phoebe Shelton and Oscar Wills are the ones that carry on through 5th and 6th place. So what's happened to Nikita Roberts? She seems to have disappeared. So that's very unfortunate indeed for Nikita Roberts. We know how good a driver she is, and it looks as though something has happened to her that has prevented her from completing the second lap, and that means that she's out of the race then on lap 2. As we go into lap 3, the fastest lap of the race comes in from Henry Colburn in 2nd place, looking at the back bumper of Bradley Sutton's car. Bradley Sutton's kart, I should say. So it is going to be very tricky for these two as they exchange sector times. Henry Colburn is the fastest man on the track by just 68 thousandths of a second. Back down the straight. Looking for a good run along Lakeside. Getting closer up towards the Stewart S's section of the course. Work the way through the left and then the right to close their position back down through the S's and then up towards St John's. Looking for the manoeuvre. Out we go through again then by the look of things. Nikita Roberts has gone back out onto the course by the look of things after what was nearly a 3-minute lap. Now, I'm not entirely sure what happened there, but she certainly looks as though she's now recovered. So Nikita Roberts has been able to get her kart started again and has rejoined at the back of the fray. But after we saw the collision between Phoebe Shelton and Oscar Wills, they recovered a lot quicker than Nikita Roberts, who has lost about 2 minutes to her opponents there. So I would say that's pretty much any chance, I'm afraid, of a top 3 result for Nikita Roberts in the final of round 5 of the championship. Pretty much extinguished. Hopefully she'll be back for more, though, of course, in the 6th round of the championship. So Bradley Sutton versus Henry Colburn. Bradley Sutton's just banged in a 103.402 as Henry Colburn continues there in 2nd position. Saunders P3, then Jaden Bond, Phoebe Shelton, Oscar Wills, and obviously a couple of laps down now, Nikita Roberts, who has completed lap number 3. Now, there she is, just a whisker in front of Phoebe Shelton on the road. If we look back, there is Oscar Wills, and if we look back even further, there is the leading duo of Bradley Sutton and Henry Colburn. So there's not a lot of room now for Nikita Roberts to make up any more ground to get up into the top 4, but from her point of view, just finishing the race could bank in valuable points. that makes it all a little bit more out of reach. So down to the Iredale's hairpin go Sutton and Colborne, looking for a decent run off the turn again. And still these two fairly evenly matched, I would say, in terms of pace and in terms of lap time. Bradley Sutton has now found the fastest lap again, a 103.402, enough to keep any decent race driver cautious. There's still plenty of good opportunities, though, coming for Henry Colborne, who's looking rather threatening in behind Bradley Sutton. And we know now, of course, that Sutton has 2 wins to Colborne's 1 through the practice heats. Let's see if there's going to be any more drama from our contenders. We watch as the 2 ladies go through, Phoebe Shelton and Nikita Roberts. But now we watch to the final turn to see how Sutton and Colborne are getting on, and they're tightened up again. So Sutton and Colborne even closer together than they were in previous laps. Saunders third, Jaden Bond P4 in front of Phoebe Shelton, Oscar Wills and Nikita Roberts. So it's going to be an interesting duel for these 2 young lads as they continue to work their magic. Bradley Sutton and Henry Colborne. Colborne is essentially just sitting here waiting for the mistake. It hasn't come yet from Bradley Sutton. Certainly nothing big enough to lose the lead. But with 5 minutes still to go and the track's still trying to keep us guessing as to what it's doing weather-wise, we could be in for some very interesting conclusions over the course of these heats. So it's certainly going well for the time being then for Henry Colborne, chasing down Bradley Sutton as these 2 battle away for the victory, but there's still plenty of time left to find in the circuit. Bradley Sutton hoping he can gain a little bit more ground here. Out of the final turn it comes Bradley Sutton ahead of Henry Colborne, and they are slowly closing up on Phoebe Shelton, who's currently P5. There may not be many karts in the race here, but if you just get to the finish, you can end up with a decent top 5 finish. That's the difficult bit, though, getting to the end of the race. It's not as easy as I made it sound, because it's very tricky, very slippery. And that's one kart slowing down to a crawl there. Is that Nikita Roberts again? I think it might be, because Nikita Roberts has already had 1 problem in the race. I think there's more. So that at least tells us that that might not have been due to driver error. I think that might have been due to mechanical difficulties there for Nikita Roberts, who does exit the kart and walk over close to the marshal post. So I'm afraid that's game over then for Nikita Roberts. Very unfortunate indeed. So whatever the problem was, it's come back, and this time it looks terminal. So Henry Colborne still giving pressure here to Bradley Sutton, who really wants a piece of the action here. So let's see if Henry Colborne is able to get close to Bradley Sutton. 7/10 of a second between them as they run in close proximity. The gap comes down to 6/10 with just over 3 minutes to go, plus the additional lap on top of it, of course. So depending on when Sutton, as the race leader, is going to cross the line here in front of Henry Colborne, that could make all the difference. But they are very nose to tail at the moment. 3rd position for Alistair Saunders. Then it is Jaden Bond, Phoebe Shelton, Oscar Wills, and the driver who is now confirmed as retiring from the race, Nikita Roberts, who completed 5 laps, but has certainly not completed lap number 6 for her. She was already 2 laps down. So from her point of view, that's a miserable end to the weekend here at Rowrah, and she'll be hoping to pick up the pieces and gain a little bit more speed and a little bit more of a better result when we get to round 6 of the championship. So good run so far then from Sutton and Colborne, with Saunders in 3rd, 4th place for Jaden Bond, Phoebe Shelton ahead of Oscar Wills for P5. Out of the turn, 2 minutes 24 still to go then. 1 lap after that as well, don't forget. All it takes is 1 little error, 1 critical lapse in judgment. So Henry Colborne is still giving big pressure to Bradley Sutton, just in case he can turn the tables. They're going to have to run out wide. Now, for those who don't watch kart racing to that much of an extent, or tuning in for the first time, the reason that they don't take the same racing line as you would see perhaps in Formula 1, cutting the apex, is very simple. In wet conditions, it is so difficult to find traction around this course. The only way to find it is to come off the racing line, where the rubber hasn't been laid down by previous cars in previous classes, because on the outside line, that's where the marbles tend to be. Now, when you mix marbles with water, they become quite sticky. So that means, of course, that they become grippier. So you run completely in opposition to the racing line. You go far out wide to pick up as much loose rubber or marbles as we call them, as possible, and that gives you a little bit more grip to run around the outside. You certainly don't want to race on the racing line, because with rubber already down on the road there, it can get very slippery, very greasy, and that's when the back end of the car wants to travel and wants to spit you out into the grass verge. But not only that, but you've also got real expectancy in the wet for making mistakes. So it's better to stay off the racing line so that you give yourself just that tiny bit more breathing space to dodge the carnage. So by staying off the racing line and just going a little bit wide, particularly if you're battling another driver, you give yourself that little bit more room to navigate around them. So Sutton and Colborne still close together. The fastest driver on the race is Bradley Sutton, a 1:03.402. But Henry Colborne's best time is a 1:03.587. Not much indeed between the two of them. So still a very close contest. And we're going to run down and out of time. But are we going to do it before they cross the line? I'm not sure they are. I think we're going to end up with another lap here. So as we cross the line this time by, Bradley Sutton's going to have a handful of seconds left on the timer. So as he crosses the line with Henry Colborne, we now have 2 laps to go. That's the way it works. Why 2, Jake? Well, it's very simple. We've only got a few seconds left on the clock. The time will run down to 0. And they will do so in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Time's up here at Rowrah. So now it's a race back to the line for the contenders. But of course, because this is a timed race, plus an additional lap, we've run out of time. We're halfway round this particular lap, so when they cross the line, I'll have to do one more, and that will decide the fate of this winner of a final. Bradley Sutton still under big pressure here from Henry Colborne. He wants the mistake. He doesn't quite have the bravery to get close enough to force a move on the inside line, because he's not as familiar here with the opportunity to do so, plus Rowrah being a very tricky course to get right. They're going to come up to some traffic. Careful, guys. Not going to be easy to make the move, and this could be exactly what Henry Colborne's been waiting for. They come off the turn. The slower kart is going to get out of the way down the main straight. Gets out of the way for the leader, Bradley Sutton. Henry Colborne could end up getting hesitant here as they go through the edge. He has the pitches move, nicely done from Colborne. They've got another slower kart in front of them. This could be the game changer in this race. A race-long duel. Colborne trying to go the long way round. There's a spinner in the background as one of the back markers loses traction. But Henry Colborne is going to try and take on Bradley Sutton. These two racers are going to go to the line here. Round the far side of the hairpin. Back on the power along Lakeside. And so we're going to get to see a real challenge from these two competitors. Down to the braking zone. Looking for a big charge forward. Let's see if we're going to see a decent overtake now from Bradley Sutton on Henry Colborne. But Colborne is all over the back of Sutton into St John's. It's going to be a chance now into Sunny. Can Colborne make the bid into Paddock Bend? He's done a lot of the hard work. He's got close enough. He's only got one chance into Paddock Bend. Can he squeeze up the inside line? He's going to go for it. He made his chance, but it's not going to happen. Bradley Sutton will hang on for the victory in front of Henry Colborne. That was so close to the line between the two drivers. Excellent work. Third position is going to go the way of Alistair Saunders. Jaden Bond has just crossed the line, a lap adrift in 4th position. Phoebe Shelton will come home in 5th ahead of Oscar Wills, with Alistair Saunders crossing the line P3. Sadly, Nikita Roberts is not going to be classified as a finisher. She only completed 5 of the 13 eventual laps. There goes Phoebe Shelton to cross the line in P5. Well, a very busy race at the end there. It took a bit of a while to get going, but once Henry Colborne realised that Bradley Sutton was catchable in the traffic, he started to get a wiggle on. One more lap, and I think that could have been a different result altogether. But here is the provisional result in the Honda Cadet 200 final here at Rowrah in the UK Kart Series Round 5. Bradley Sutton is going to be the provisional race winner, having taken the wins in Heat 1 and Heat 3, as well as fending off from a brilliant charge from Henry Colborne. There is the provisional result, as you can see. Bradley Sutton ahead of Henry Colborne, then Alistair Saunders. Jaden Bond in P4, a lap down. Phoebe Shelton able to come through in 5th position ahead of Oscar Wills. Very unfortunate that Nikita Roberts was not able to get to the finish. That's going to really hamper her chances in the championship. And we know how good a driver she can be at the best of times. Hopefully, she will be in a position to bounce back at the next round of the championship. So the Honda Cadet 200 final coming to a very natural conclusion there. Bradley Sutton hanging on in front of Henry Colborne. Right, well, we've had our 2 standing start procedures. Now we're going to get ourselves into the 3rd race of the day. And so as they make their way out onto the course, it is going to be the Junior Pro Kart Extreme final. Now they're making their way out onto the course, and they will form up on the 2 rows of tram lines, of course, because this is the formation lap, and they will take a rolling start procedure out onto the course. It's going to be Sebastian Thompson who lines up in pole position for this one. The way things have gone so far at Rowrah in Honda Cadet 200 has been very interesting indeed. Oh, and hang on a minute, with it being Hondas, I think they might actually form up on the grid, but they do get a formation lap before we get to that point. So let's just work through the way that the day has played out so far for Honda Cadet 200. We had the qualifying session, of course, yesterday evening that saw Junior Pro Kart Extreme we're talking about here. Sebastian Thompson lining up after getting a pole position in Extreme Qualifying 1. The second session topped by Daniel Kadazinski. And then Heat 1 was taken by Sebastian Thompson. He bounced back again in Heat 2 as well. And in Heat 3, it went the way of young Rowan Marshall. So we're going to get an interesting battle here. Thompson and Kadazinski, Marshall and White, and then Ian Bagat from Lorenzo Martin, Dhruv Raut, Finley Worthy, and Max Hausago. Here we go, green flag flies, and we're into great race battles already. Side by side for the lead. It's going to be a tight one and a very close quarters run between Sebastian Thompson and Rowan Marshall, both of whom have taken race victories so far here today. Big run wide up the inside and a big cut across, and we've got one kart in the gravel. This is when we get big changes and big moments on the first lap of racing. My monitor is making it very difficult to pick out individual cars, but we can see the derivation of strategy on the first lap. 3 wide coming out of Iredale's as one kart rides the curbs, the other takes to the outside line to hug the marbles. But certainly the lead of the race is going to change a couple of times more on this lap by the look of it, as we get the 2 leaders side by side and a little slide wide in the duel for 4th position, as we get another great duel from the Junior Pro Kart Extreme contenders. They splish and splash their way out of the stewardesses into St. John's. Bit of a run wide there through the right-hander. To the left, there's going to be a nice little battle. Further back, we can see the likes of White, Martin, Bagger, and Dhruv Raut all having a very intriguing run. So as we come off the turn and onto the main straight, it's still Thompson from Marshall, then Dan Kadazinski. Jensen White has been overtaken on the first laps by Ian Bagger, Dhruv Raut, Lorenzo Martin, and Finley Worthy. So Jensen White is in 8th place. Max Hausago running down to the back of the field, although it looks to me as though Max Hausago has not been able to take the start. I wonder if he had a mechanical problem. So Thompson has got into the lead and has started to pull clear then of Rowan Marshall. Dan Kadazinski running well. Right, Max Hausago has now completed the first lap, so he's spun off into the chicane there, he's spun off into the S's. So Max Hausago, very unfortunate there to spin off while trying to catch up to the rest of the field. As we mentioned before, these Junior Pro karts, very tricky in these conditions, as are any karts in these conditions. Jensen White there, I think, getting the move on Finley Worthy out of the hairpin. So the Stewart S's, it hasn't really looked like it's going to be a miserable one for him there, but he's trying to hold it together and not rush the process of working his way back up the field. So for the moment, Sebastian Thompson having an absolutely perfect race. Rowan Marshall in 2nd place. But Dan Kadazinski is under a bit of increasing pressure now from Ian Bagger. And look at the quartet behind, all still very close. Dhruv Raut, Jensen White, Lorenzo Martin, and Finley Worthy. Got to go a long way back in this pack to reach Max Hausago, but we can certainly see the battles paying off here. Out of the inside line, I thought that was going to be Jensen White trying to make his move on the inside of Dhruv Raut. It is on the exit. He dives into McRae's and his opponent has to drift wide, so Dhruv Raut loses out there to Jensen White. Dhruv Raut is going to try and get the move on the inside line. He gives him a little nudge and a love tap as they slide their way through the hairpin at Iredale's. Dhruv Raut is going to drop to P7. That was more like Fast and the Furious Tokyo Drift than it was karting. Up to the inside line, Dhruv Raut is going to try and dive back to the inside. He uses the curbs to good measure there, slows the pace down as he dives the kart in. So Rowrah still battling away with Finley Worthy and Lorenzo Martin. Got to be very careful where you position the karts these days. If you run around the far side, you're going to lose a lot of traction, but that's well held by Rowrah. There's the leader, Sebastian Thompson. No worries at all for him with 8.5 minutes left on the clock. Rowan Marshall, P2. Then we've got Kadashinsky, but fourth position is a drag race as Ian Bagger is trying desperately to shake off Jensen White, and I think Jensen White got the move there. So the number 58, I think, has been able to move into fourth position. We'll wait for official confirmation, naturally, because from this distance, in these conditions, I may as well be looking through a wet newspaper. So, very tricky at the moment. Finding the way through the hairpin. You may have wondered why I chose that analogy. Well, you can see through wet newspaper, but not very well at all. So it's tricky stuff indeed then for our contenders. Thompson, Marshall and Kadashinsky. Then Ian Bagger, Jensen White and Rowrah in front of Lorenzo Martin and Finley Worthy. The last kart in the race is Max Hausago. And he obviously started a little bit later than his fellow racers. In through St. John's. This is looking like it could dial into something pretty special here. Trying desperately not to run too far over the line as Sebastian Thompson continues to lead here at Rowrah. Second place for Rowan Marshall. No great fears, but it's Dan Kadashinsky versus Ian Bagger. That is one heck of a battle. Jensen White in the mix there, of course, as well in fourth position. So Kadashinsky versus White, still having a really great race of this. Down the short stretch towards their hairpin. Call this bend the I like to call this particular bend McRae's, because of course that is what is referred to. Iredale's with the hairpin, trying best to get back on the power and run down Lakeside. Still very tight at the tail end of the field. We've got a nice little battle brewing here, I think, between Thompson and Rowan Marshall. Dan Kadashinsky still P4, but Jensen White is holding firmly to this fourth place. Ian Bagger is causing him all sorts of problems on the run to St. John's. I thought he was going to be bold and brave. He's going to take a faster line round the outside. Again, he'll take the outside line to run on the tyres, the old ones, but that part of the course looks relatively clear. Thompson is your leader, Marshall in second place, then Dan Kadashinsky, who is going to come through now. Although he's going to come through side by side at the moment with Jensen White. White's going to hold it to the inside line and takes the position away. Good run from Jensen White. So the number 58 machine has worked its way to third position, but can Dan Kadashinsky respond in kind moments later? Off the hairpin. Oh, I just thought he was going to have a bit of an undercut there, but very nice work indeed then from the number 27 of Dan Kadashinsky. Again, they drift into the hairpin. Again, kart racers have a distinct knowledge when they're confident in the seat of where the rain is and where it's going to improve. So for the moment, Sebastian Thompson, oh, and into the barriers. Now, we've had somebody spin off the road there. I think that's a back marker, but it's worth confirming because that was certainly a driver up towards the sharp end of the dais. 5.5 minutes left of this race, as we know, and you don't want to be pitching the kart off into the barriers there because it's going to be impossible to recover. So Thompson, then Marshall, and Dan Kadashinsky. Very good work indeed then from our competitors as they run in close proximity. Side by side between Kadashinsky and White. They were actually only separated by a couple of hundredths of a second as they went over the line that time by. Still they squabble through the S's. Thompson, Marshall, Kadashinsky and White still squabbling over third place. Then in P5 it is Ian Bagger, Lorenzo Martin, then Rowrah, Finley Worthy and Max Hausago, who of course has not made progress after his difficult start to the race, starting about a minute behind everybody else. But what he has been able to achieve so far is to keep his lap times down to a 1:18.1. You've got to learn on the job in this category. It's not like the national championships where you've had years of experience, months of on-school training. You've got to be very careful about balancing your schoolwork and your karting work, so you don't want to spend too many days testing because that will compromise you in the classroom. There is Sebastian Thompson going through the course in the lead, and there is the man in second place, Rowan Marshall. So Rowan Marshall has dropped a lot of time there. What was his last lap time? A 1:10.4. It's a bit of an issue for Marshall as Jensen White comes through in third place. His move did finish off in good style there ahead of Dan Kadaszynski, who's down to P4 ahead of Ian Bagger, Lorenzo Martin, Finley Worthy and Rowrah with Max Hausego still circulating, but certainly not in favour of getting the podium at the moment. Quite a long way back, it has to be said. 3 minutes and a half plus the additional lap. Definitely getting to the critical end of the race for these guys. So into the stewardesses once again. Got to be so careful how far wide you go. That is the more preferred line in the wet conditions, because you don't want to be running over the rubber that's been left down by the previous dry races. And of course, don't forget, a week ago we had the British Mini Bikes Championships here, so their rubber will be down on the racing line as well, although they actually raced in very similar conditions to this a week ago. Sebastian Thompson ahead of Owen Marshall now by 13 seconds. That mistake from Marshall really has cost him badly, but he's still there in P2 ahead of White, Kadaszynski, Bagger, Martin, Worthy, Rout and Hausego. Out of the chicane, up to McRae's, turn in, hold the cart around the far side, don't get too exerted on the throttle, just keep the balance, keep the blend, make sure that there's a little bit more to do. Oh, and straight off the road and into the grass there. Big mistake, I'm afraid to say, for, I think that was Jensen White, who bangs his fist on the steering wheel. No, it's Dan Kadaszynski. Kadaszynski bangs his fist on the steering wheel. He can't believe he's made that mistake into Iredale's. That is so easily done. He grass tracks his way through the mud, but that's going to cost him at least 2 positions. I'm fairly sure that both Ian Bagger and Lorenzo Martin were able to get ahead of him there. So easy to do, though. He'll be punishing himself with those punches on the steering wheel, but it's so easy to make the mistakes here. Thompson now ahead of Marshall, White, then it's Bagger, Martin and Kadaszynski, who has started to catch up to his rivals again. And then we've got Finley Worthy ahead of Rowrah. And then we have Max Hausego down at the back of the field. It's getting pretty scary out there for drivers who want a smooth run. Ian Bagger having to deal with Lorenzo Martin now. So Martin trying to move up into 4th place. Ian Bagger holding on to that move. They run deep into the turn. Well covered there by Lorenzo Martin. Another driver might have kept their foot in on the exit of that, and that could have ended up causing a collision, because of course Ian Bagger went into the turn with a fairly tight radius in the middle of the road. Now he's going to dive to the inside line. Martin finds his move to the inside line. They're going to go side by side. They're going to bang wheels as they come off the turn, nudging, trying to get the most off the acceleration. And as they go into St. John's, they're going to have to tidy this up, because otherwise they run the risk of getting penalties for contact. Well, very close indeed. It's going to be Thompson, of course, who leads the way. He's already gone through. Then Rowan Marshall, then Jensen White, and that's now Lorenzo Martin, I do believe, that's worked his way masterfully, indeed it is, into 4th position ahead of Bagger, Kadaszynski and Finley Worthy, with Rowrah having dropped back, and Max Hausego now out of the race as far as I can tell. If not, he is being lapped now by the leading bunch. So Lorenzo Martin, what a crafty little manoeuvre there into the Stewart hairpin to dive on the inside line of Ian Bagger and get the place. What I was talking about just before all that kicked off, of course, is that the conditions here, you want to be careful that you don't push the threshold of racing to the limit in these conditions, because it's very slippery. We're getting to that point, if we're not careful, as we run the time down to 0 and wait for the race to finish, because we're about to go into the last lap for Sebastian Thompson. That's how big his lead is. So Sebastian Thompson way out in front of the rest. He's managed to extend that gap, by the way, by 15 seconds to Rowan Marshall. This is looking like a bit of a Lewis Hamilton Lark Hall 98 situation for Sebastian Thompson. He has got such a big lead over his opposition. There is the Marshall to the middle of your picture with the board that says last lap. So all the drivers now know they've got one final lap of this Rowrah course to negotiate this weekend before they can start thinking about the long drive home. Sebastian Thompson leads the way, Rowan Marshall 2nd, Jensen White P3. Martin wants to stay there in front of Ian Bagger, of course. And they're still swapping positions. They had a little bit of a nudge there, I think, as they went through. So is there going to be Martin and Bagger managing to collide with each other on the final lap? I'm not entirely sure. We'll have to look back and see what that little moment into McRae's has done for this race. As out of the final turn will come the green machine, Sebastian Thompson. He has absolutely marched his way to the victory. He takes the checkered flag. It's a victory, a dominant one for Sebastian Thompson. No problem at all. So Rowan Marshall will have to settle on this occasion for second position, having taken a win earlier on in the day in heat number 3. Second place will do for Rowan Marshall. He was almost caught at the end of the race there by Jensen White. He was gaining about 0.8 of a second or so per lap at the end. Fourth place for Lorenzo Martin, ahead of Ian Bagger. So they do manage to come through in relative comfort. Dan Katarzyński comes home in P6 in front of Findlay Worthy, but he will be absolutely enraged about it. Rowrah is going to come through in front of Max Hausago by a couple of laps. So that is all she wrote, ladies and gentlemen. So the Junior Pro Kart Extreme Final here at Rowrah has gone the way of the number 4, Sebastian Thompson, following in the footsteps of his fellow number 4 racer, Lando Norris, doing a fantastic job here in Cumbria. Lando, of course, was very successful on this circuit back in the day. There is Max Hausago crossing the line to complete his race duration. And so here's the provisional result. Sebastian Thompson taking the win in front of Rowan Marshall, then Jensen White ahead of Lorenzo Martin. Ian Bagger in P5, Dan Katarzyński is going to be hopping mad at finishing in P6. Findlay Worthy in 7th place from Rowrah and Max Hausago. That's the order, and it's been a fantastic race. Domination for Sebastian Thompson. We're halfway home through our finals here at Rowrah, folks. 3 down and 3 to go, and it's the Honda R200 final next up. Now, in the 3 heats so far in Honda R200, it's been a very competitive affair. We all know, if we're regular watchers of the UK Kart Series, that in Honda R200, there are 3 serial race leaders who have been very much at the top spot all the way through the season. In Heat 1 today, we had a victory from Ashton Horspool. In Race 2, we had another fantastic victory, this time for Aaron Berridge. And in Heat 3, it went the way of Harry Pennington. So it's been very close all the way through then in Honda R200. So the grid for the final, Ashton Horspool and Aaron Berridge tied for points. But the qualifying time of Ashton Horspool is what puts him on pole position. So Horspool from Berridge, then Rocco Geraghty and Harry Pennington. From Peter Webster, Lewis Dean, Matthew Plant, Mia Duffel, Oliver James Smith, Rebecca Restel, then Louis Comber, Aidan Ingram and Carter Lundy that will continue the grid. So as the field works its way through, it looks like we've got a spin on the formation lap there. So that just shows you how tricky it is to maneuver in these conditions. We've got kids bearing down on the start-finish straight in the Honda R200 final. Everybody wanting to have a very decent start to proceedings, of course. They want to put themselves into a race-winning form, but it's never easy to know who's going to get the job done here. Just 3 races remaining, and now we are into the 2 tram lines as the drivers prepare for the off. Horspool and Berridge, Geraghty and Pennington, Webster and Dean, Plant and Duffel, Smith, Restel, Comber, Ingram and Lundy. And for my money, the win could go one of 5 ways. Ashton Horspool, Aaron Berridge, Rocco Geraghty, Harry Pennington, or Peter Webster. Off we go. And it is a great charge forward for our 5 drivers. We go into the chicane for the first time. Is there going to be some contact? There is indeed, but we just about get away with it. But there's going to be a couple of wrestling matches as they work their way to the braking zone into McRae's. Very tricky situation. A couple of drivers going wide, and there's 2-3 of them spinning off. We've managed to get them all going again, but that's definitely compromised a couple of races at the start here. And as we work our way through Iredales, there's a few more loose positions for the drivers. A lot of sideways action there at the start, but for Aaron Berridge, I think he's managed to stay out of harm's way for the moment, but certainly for Ashton Horspool, and I think in the place that's Rocco Geraghty, will confirm it very shortly. Unfortunately, my monitor is not giving me good access to the numbers of these cards from a distance, so part of me is running on live timing, part of me is obviously trying to pick it out from the helmet design, but we're about to get a new leader as we come off the final turn, back on acceleration. No, we're not, because it's only going to last a few meters. Berridge managed to get back in front of Hospital, and Geraghty will now dive up the inside to get into second place. But it is going to be like this all race long if Honda R200 is anything to go by this season. We go down to the hairpin. All three of them run together in the line. They all go right off the circuit as well in their bid to move further forward. Geraghty already starting to think about a race victory here. He knows how close he can get to the back of Berridge. He wants to get early on the throttle, but look at Ashton Horspool. He's going to try and get level and parallel with Rocco Geraghty. Maybe there'll be enough of an opportunity into the hairpin at Stewart to try and make the bid. He does indeed, and he gets there. Ashton Horspool up to second position now again in front of Rocco Geraghty. They're both giving chase to Aaron Berridge, so this is a fantastic run from the top three drivers. Braking zone. A little bit of a love tap into the braking zone there for St John's and into Sunny. So both drivers giving it very tough indeed on the opening couple of laps. Out onto the circuit again. Berridge, Horspool, Geraghty, not much to choose between them. P4 for Matthew Plant, then Louis Comber, Oliver James Smith, Mia Duffel and Peter Webster, sadly, who is all the way down to 8th position. Then Carter Lundy, Harry Pennington, who is all the way down to P10, having taken a victory in Heat 3. And then Lewis Dean, Rebecca Restel and Aidan Ingram. Here we go. Is this going to be the move for the lead? Well, I thought Ashton Horspool had that lined up on Aaron Berridge. Berridge made sure it wasn't on. He moves the car once in a clear move, slightly closer to the inside line. Now is this going to be the invitation for Ashton Horspool up the inside into Stewart? Just doesn't want to take the gamble. He's not quite close enough. And as a result of holding the field up here, Berridge is going to ensure that another man joins the party. That looks like Matthew Plant in the distance. Into St John's, right-hander. Into Sunnybend, left-hander. Back on the power, up towards their hairpin. This is going to be a bold lunge on the inside line, and I think we're going to get a lead change as Ashton Horspool is going to move in front of Berridge. But can he shut the door? Berridge has got a good momentum off the third, and Berridge is going to get back to the inside line and reclaims the position. There's nothing in it between these three drivers. And in the damp conditions at Rowrah, this is the absolute perfect textbook as to why Honda R200 is so exciting in the UK Kart Series in 2025. Now we got four of them joining for the win. Horspool, Berridge, Geraghty and Matthew Plant, who's just set the fastest lap, by the way, a 1:04.465. That's half a second quicker than anybody else has managed so far. So watch out for Matthew Plant. He's not done in fourth position. Ashton Horspool was briefly ahead there of Aaron Berridge, but now Berridge in the light blue machine remains in front. So Horspool trying to get his dive on the inside line. Don't think you're going to mess with this man with a cheap shot. You're going to have to really pull out the stops to get back into the lead and hope that your momentum isn't going to drop you further back. We've seen that a couple of times already in this race. Okay, so you can take the lead by taking the lead, but it doesn't always guarantee the victory. So Berridge, Horspool, Geraghty, Plant. Top four welded together for the next 7.5 minutes. This could be the most nail-biting battle we get in the weekend. Out of the braking zone for McRae's. One by one, tippy-toe by tippy-toe. It's very, very tricky stuff here. Down to the braking zone. Berridge controls it from Ashton Horspool, who in turn has given a very late lunge into the competition for a couple of the competitors around them. Fourth place, of course, one of the competitors in this championship since the onset. So now we watch to see who's going to make the next bid. Horspool looking very hungry here behind Aaron Berridge. As our drone, maybe there's a little bit more rain around the circuit, maybe it's just a little bit of a crosswind, but whatever happens is slowly moving away from the circuit, and that tells me that they might either be lining up a shot or they're going to have to land the drone because of the weather conditions and off the inside. Neither driver prepared to give best. Beautiful from Ashton Horspool. He forces the issue on Aaron Berridge, and that backs Berridge into Geraghty and Plant. So the four drivers will continue to bite. Bit of a run wide there from Horspool. Berridge is going to get alongside him. Now he chops back across off the turn. And up to the inside line, Geraghty fancies his chances of taking the lead here from Aaron Berridge, although of course it's not the lead anymore. It's now second, down Lakeside, out of the hairpin. Braking zone, Will Carr has just been fascinating to see. how this one finishes. Still very tight up front, and this is where Rocco Garrity can really start pushing Ashton Horspool and Aaron Berridge into a bit of a mistake here. So Horspool is now the leader. That is Berridge in second place. Or is it? Because on the inside line, Rocco Garrity gets into second position of the hairpin. Shut the door, shut the door. He's just about managed to do so. Well done to Rocco Garrity. He managed to pull just enough across the line that there wasn't going to be any retaliation just yet from Aaron Berridge. And meanwhile, into P4 has come Oliver James Smith. He's now the fastest driver on the circuit. A 104.248 in front of Matthew Plant, Harry Pennington, Mia Duffel, Louis Comer and Lewis Dean. He's going to go and find Peter Webster, a regular front runner in this competitive environment, but now finds himself a long way to now that has corrected. It's actually Lewis Dean. My apologies there. So just under 5 minutes to go. You do get the sense that Horspool doesn't want to be in this battle anymore. He just wants to race away now that he's got into the lead. But it's not as easy as it looks. Through the S's. These are a fantastic pair of squabblers. They've given us plenty to get excited about so far. They come off the turn, and with 4.5 minutes to go, we are counting down these laps with Horspool just a whisker in front of Garrity. Aaron Berridge has moved his way up into third position. Don't count out Aaron Berridge for this one. If these two tangle, Berridge becomes the 4th different race winner of this weekend in the Honda R200 category. Because we've had victories so far for Ashton Horspool, for Aaron Berridge, and for Harry Pennington, who, by the way, has worked his way back up into the top 6. Good challenges all the way, but it's not going to be easy to pick a winner from this race. Still, they duel for supremacy, and still, they are going to go fruitless here. No point trying to put your opponent off when you're racing wheel to wheel and hoping for a decent result. Ashton Horspool leads Rocco Garrity and Aaron Berridge, then Oliver James Smith, Matthew Plant, Harry Pennington back into P6 in front of Mia Duffel, and then it is Louis Comer and Lewis Dean. Peter Webster not making much progress, I'm afraid, from P10. Then Aidan Ingram, Rebecca Restall and Carter Lundy. Across the line we go. Into lap number 9 then for Rocco Garrity, the race leader. Having got ahead of Aaron Berridge, he's now leaving Berridge and Horspool for dead. So Rocco Garrity, now your new race leader, as Berridge and Horspool are struggling not to trip over each other. This could be perfect for Garrity, and if it stays like this, then we're going to get, for sure, 4 different winners from 4 starts, as now Berridge and Horspool are going to duel away for position in second and third. We've got to be careful because Oliver James Smith and Matthew Plant are not that far away. Here comes Horspool trying to get the run on the inside of Aaron Berridge, clearly feeling that he needs to get a chance to catch back up to Rocco Garrity. But it is going to be a tight one all the way between these two racers. Second and third position for Aaron Berridge and Ashton Horspool. Into St John's, the right-hander. Down the crest, into the left-hander at Sunnybend. And then there's your leader, Rocco Garrity, who pounced at exactly the right time on both Aaron Berridge and Ashton Horspool, sliding his way into second place, finding the lead of the competition in this particular heat. Very nicely worked. So Berridge, second place. Horspool backs off the charge. Slow in and fast out is what we refer to it in motorsport. But down to the hairpin in the left-hander. No chance that Adam Berridge is playing ball on this occasion. And look at the battle further back. As Horspool draws level with Berridge, and we've got 3 battling for 4th place. That's Oliver James Smith, Harry Pennington and Matthew Plant, all squabbling away for position. Look at the exit from Ashton Horspool. He's going to go side by side with Aaron Berridge, and they're going to be a drag race down the lakeside straight. Who's going to get to the inside first? Is there going to be a little bit of contact? There's a little bit of paint trading between them. Oh, they've got each other, and somehow both got through the corner anyway. Berridge and Horspool bang side wheel, bang side pods, bang wheels, and still keep going. As meanwhile, they're being caught now by the duel for 4th position. Harry Pennington having got himself into 5th position ahead of Matthew Plant. I think that's him now, trying to get to the lead position. Here goes Horspool, back to the inside, squeezes Berridge, and he's got through this time. Rocco Garrity into second position. Here comes Berridge back for more, and he's reclaimed the place. Berridge back in a second place. No matter what Ashton Horsball throws at him, he has got a response. And now these two joining away the position, they're being caught by the drivers behind them. Horsball tries again. What do I have to do to get past it? Man, now he's got him. Horsball finally gets the run on Berridge, and now he's going to get some support from the men behind. They're going to go rogue. They're going to go 3 wide behind Horsball, out up the inside into second place. Somehow Berridge is going to hit the front of this train. How has he found himself back in a second place? 5 drivers going for it. Berridge, Bennington, Horsball, Matthew Plant, and there's going to be contact and a spin at the back as Berridge loses his second position again, this time to Harry Bennington. Oh my goodness, this is the battle of the season in UK Kart Series, and Berridge finds his move through St John's, round the outside, comes his abundance, and it's going to be a big slip and slide on the way to the final turns. But what a battle as Berridge emerges in second place in front of his opponents. But he's going to have to defend on the way to the first chicane again from Harry Pennington, who dives on the inside. Berridge keeps himself in place, and there goes Ashton Horsball round the far side of the Pennington. Down to the braking zone of McRae's. Horsball's going to get some support here. Pennington will have a bit of an opportunity. He gets well away from Oliver James Smith. It was Plant who spun. Horsball nosing in front, and he's got him. He's got Berridge, but he drifts wide. Berridge cuts back across. Horsball keeps his foot in. So does Pennington, and Berridge is back down to P4. Excellent racing. Oliver James Smith now 5th. Matthew Plant in P6. He's managed to get himself back up to speed. So Horsball's now got Pennington all over the back of him for second place. Rocco Garrity is away with the fairies up in front, and he is getting a big gesture. Ashton Horsball onto the back of Harry Pennington. Come on, stop racing me. Let's work our way forward. Berridge is into 3rd place. He gets on the inside of Pennington. Horsball drifts out wide. Berridge going to try and cut in. Pennington on the inside of Berridge, and as they tuck in for the hairpin, it's going to be a very tough race indeed between these guys. Berridge now gets back through on Pennington, and he takes Oliver James Smith for the ride as we go into the last lap. Garrity way out in front. It's going to be his victory, and that'll make it 4 different winners from the 4 races this weekend. But up the inside, Horsball is going to have all sorts of pressure now from Berridge, and these two still battle away. Berridge to the inside of Horsball. They're going to go side by side. So are Smith and Pennington. Down to the braking zone. Horsball on the inside of Berridge. Here goes Pennington. He's going to take them both. Berridge is nerfed wide, and Horsball gets the benefit into second position. So Oliver James Smith is now in a 3rd position. Berridge won't take kindly to that. He's down to 4th position. Matthew Plant is closing in on Harry Pennington as a result. So Garrity leads. Horsball 2nd and Smith in 3rd. Berridge is going to have some pressure here from Harry Pennington, but up in front, Rocco Garrity has been allowed to disappear. He's going to get the victory. Still Oliver James Smith tries to hang on in front of Berridge, and that's going to give Pennington the move. Checkered flag though, Rocco Garrity takes the victory here at Rowrah, and they're still battling for second place out of the final turn. It's going to be a race to the line. It's Horsball who just beats Oliver James Smith, Harry Pennington, and Aaron Berridge is all the way down in P5. Matthew Plant in 6th. From Lewis Dean, Mia Duffel, and Peter Webster is going to go wheel to wheel down the straight with Louis Comber. Louis is going to get it. Peter has to succumb to 10th place. Aidan Ingram in 11th place in front of Rebecca Restel and Carter Lundy. That was the final of the season from Honda R200. Absolutely rip-roaring stuff. My goodness me, what a final that was. Rocco Garrity takes the victory out front, and deservedly so. Ashton Horsball wins the war of words with his opponents Oliver James Smith, Harry Pennington, Aaron Berridge and Matthew Plant. A race that will go down in UK Kart Series history. One of the best we've ever had. Lewis Dean is 7th ahead of Mia Duffel, Louis Comber and Peter Webster, with Aidan Ingram, Rebecca Restel and Carter Lundy making it to the flag despite the tricky conditions. How many times did we see drivers spin off and go off the road and get into each other's paths and knock off the circuit and bang into each other and slip and slide and fall out of the contention? Unbelievable stuff there from the Honda R200 race. That's probably the best race I have seen where everybody that started also came through for the finish. Absolutely amazing from the Honda R200s. And now I feel sorry for the senior pro karts because they've got to live up to that. We've just got 2 races to go then here at Rowrah. And for the Senior Pro Kart final, it's going to be a very competitive race this, with 31 karts out on the course So in these conditions, which are not quite dry, not quite wet, expect this to be a very difficult race for our drivers in the Senior Pro Kart Brigade. Just 2 races to go here, Senior Pro Kart and then the BWR categories, both in Senior and Junior, but this will be tough. 31 drivers on the grid, and it's going to be the number 7, Aaron Alexander, that will line up in pole position alongside Jake Richardson. Then John Hogan, Zach Dawson is next up. Then it is going to be Ike Needham and Carl Ruddock. Then we have Peter Stott and Ollie Clegg. Ronnie Rowe and Jack Don Bobbin will round out the top 10. And then we'll have Zach Burgess ahead of Finley Marshall. 7th row will be Bradley Rowe and Riley Bowen. And then Connor McCarthy alongside Gavin Pike, Ben Morby and Steve Nichols, Alfie Wilkes and James Drabwell, Christian Bellaby and Chris Fuller. Then Oliver Hall, Max Mannion, Dominic Needham, Matthew Hushby, Freddie Hausago, Reese Bright, Tom Hewland, Graham Fernandez, and at the back of the field, it is going to be Andrea Brajario Mastieta. So as you can see, the drivers venture out onto the course then, finding out how tricky the conditions are, and I tell you, they are the most impossible conditions that it is possible for a kart racer to face. It is not bone dry, it is not soaking wet. So what tyres do you choose? Do you go onto wets or do you go onto slicks? It's an absolute nightmare for the strategists, but for the driver, it all comes down to the epic feel that we've got in position. Very tough stuff at the moment for the contenders. We'll see some really exciting battles come out of the paddock here. So still, the battles will be very tight. Are we going to see another close proximity duel all the way? Expect the unexpected. I'm going to see some really tricky battles here. Well, a very tricky situation for all of the contenders here. They're going to make their way out onto the rolling start procedure. The races so far, Aaron Alexander took the victory in Heat 1. Jake Richardson got it done in Heat 2. Then Aaron Alexander bounced back for the victory in Heat number 3. That means that it's going to be Aaron Alexander who gets the pole position for this one. And then it will be Jake Richardson alongside of the 2 drivers that have won races so far. So who is going to get the job done? So out of the final turn, and we go into race stream. It is green flags. Aaron Alexander leads into the first corner, and it's not a bad start at all for Jake Richardson under the circumstances. Everybody trying to get their way through the S's without too much drama. Expect a couple of drivers to run off onto the grass and onto the mud, and there's going to be spins, and there's going to be carnage. Hopefully nobody's going to hit too many karts off the road, several of them having to take avoiding action for the kart that spun out there in the middle of the road. I couldn't quite see who it was that's dropped to the back of the field, but we're going to see one person though. So a very tricky situation, and there's going to be more argy-bargy down at Iredale's in the midfield of the seniors. That's the thing, when you've got no grip at all, it is treacherous, and there's another kart spinning off down the field there. I think that was Christian Bellaby on the 66 kart. So a very difficult scenario then for our contenders as Aaron Alexander leads Jake Richardson. But what are we going to see through the course of this Senior Pro Kart final here in the UK Kart Series? A lot of slipping and sliding around and a lot of potential badinage. But out in front, Aaron Alexander is doing what he needs to. Out in front of Jake Richardson. Then it's Ike Needham, who's got ahead of Zach Dawson in the green machine. There is Zach Dawson, now in front of John Hogan, who is so good at putting himself in the right place at the right time. Big run wide from Ike Needham. Can Zach Dawson get around the outside and get into 3rd place into McRae's? Not quite able to make the bid there as they work their way through the far side, out of the hairpin, back on the power and up towards the hairpin. Next time out, it's going to be Needham from Dawson, and then John Hogan ahead of Carl Ruddock, then Peter Stott, Ollie Clegg and Ronnie Rowe ahead of Steve Nichols. Lots of traction to try and fight. None of it appears to be there on the course because everybody is really struggling to get the power down out of the turns. And that's because it's not wet, it's not dry, it's that fine line in between. And we always see tricky races in those conditions, especially when you then hit a wet patch and it all changes the outside of the tyres, and that's off the road for Ike Needham. He loses control of the car completely. Zach Dawson was very nearly past him on the far side. You've got to be so careful on this part of the course. It is an absolute power slide through Sunny Bend. Several drivers running wide there now and going completely wide and off the road, trying desperately to get back on the road without losing too much ground. But I can tell you that we've had several drivers go down the order. Jack Bobbin was the one who spun off on the first lap. Ben Morby has failed to complete the first lap. And Christian Bellaby was indeed the one who spun off earlier on. And we've seen a lot of drops there, unfortunately. It was Riley Bowen and Finley Marshall who went off the road in their bids to stay on at Sunny. But this is all about pressure now. All of the contenders are struggling to get the power down. Give it a bit of an opportunity to look at Aaron Alexander and Jake Richardson's lap times. They're both in the 103s. Jake Richardson's fastest lap was the 103.2. Nobody else can get into the 103s. And down at the back, you've got the likes of Christian Bellaby and Freddie Hausego, who are doing 160s and 170s. So they're a good 30 to 14 seconds a lap slower. It is so difficult to go quickly in these conditions when you have no idea where the grip is to be found. But only Aaron Alexander and Jake Richardson are setting relatively competitive times here. So Ike Needham is in third position. On the end of lap 3, he is 8 seconds behind Alexander and Richardson. That's the difference in pace. So Alexander and Richardson know how to look after these karts and look after these tyres and the conditions. Look down Lakeside, there they are. That is Alexander and Richardson looking into Iredale's the hairpin. There's Needham in front of John Hogan. So what's happened to Dawson? What's happened to Zach Dawson? So Zach Dawson has dropped the way down the order. He's down to P6. So he's lost a lot of ground there. I didn't see what happened, but he's now behind Carl Ruddock. So Needham is in third, Hogan is in fourth, Ruddock is in fifth, and Zach Dawson back in P6 ahead of Peter Stott. And then we've got Ron Ollie Craig and Steve Nichols, and there's a spin in Iredale's. Someone else has dropped backwards down the field, trying desperately to recover without losing too much ground. But this is not easy in these conditions. All of the races are timed, and I have to say, it's just as well they are. If they were a number of laps, we would really struggle to meet our schedule before a reasonable time. So thank goodness the races are timed plus one lap rather than set to a certain distance. But these conditions really do bring out the best in a particular driver and the worst in others, as we're waiting to see coming off the final turn. I think that's going to be a hard charging Chris Fuller, losing ground there to Humphrey Wilkes. Indeed, Wilkes has gone through, so has Oliver Hall, and so is Finley Marshall. Chris Fuller losing 3 places in one go, and off the road, several drivers going wide there at McRae's. It's causing all sorts of flotsam and jetsam in the mid-pack as we get now slightly beyond the half-distance mark. But look how tricky it is, and a spin into Iredale's yet again. These are the worst conditions for karting imaginable. You're on slicks, it's not dry, it's not wet, it's somewhere in between, and that fine line is so hard to read. But look at Alexander and Richardson, they're already half a lap ahead of everybody. Look back, where's Needham? There he is. There's Ike Needham in third position, and the gap between him and the leader is now 9.5 seconds. Hogan is fourth, now it's Dawson, he's got back ahead of Ruddock. Now the rest of the field is struggling to stay in touch, so it's becoming a real race of attrition. You've got to just try and stay on the road. These karts driven by these very skillful young senior pro kart drivers, but it's not easy to keep these karts on the road. Let's have a look at slight problems down the field. And there was a spin there for Finley Marshall, he lost 5 places. Riley Bowen's dropped back, and so too has Jack Bobbin. So some big difficulties there on the run. Steve Nichols ran wide on that last lap, and the man who lost a lot of places was Finley Marshall, recovering just in front of Christian Bellaby. And for the leaders, they've already gone past a lapped kart. So that, I think, is Ben Morby. Oh no, sorry, can't be Ben Morby, because Morby retired from the race on the first lap. So I think it must be Andrea Brahim Mustieta that they put a lap on. Look at how tight it is further back. We've got 5 karts in close unison here. This is the duel between Bowen, Fuller, Hushby, Needham and Wright, I do believe. Might be even further up the field than that, actually, because we've got 5 drivers very closely matched together up in that middle section of the course. No, it is Bowen, Fuller, Hushby, Needham and Bright. They cross the line once again. 5 minutes to go, plus the additional lap. But if you're Aaron Alexander or Jake Richardson, you've got a handle of the situation, and that's up to you guys to dictate the pace of the rest of this race. And let's not forget that they are 10 seconds clear of Needham and the rest. So So a lot of this race will have come down to tyre pressures as well. As long as you keep them within a legal PSI, you can pretty much be ready to pounce with whatever the weather's going to throw you. It does look like Alexander and Richardson have done this absolutely to plan. So Fru's getting past the back marker. Andrea Brahadio Mastieta. So he can be... Well, apologies there for the slight break in transition. I think a weather pattern must have tried its best to intervene at some point there. So Aaron Alexander leads, Jake Richardson second, and they are now 11.5 seconds pretty much to the good ahead of Ike Needham, John Hogan, Zach Dawson, Carl Ruddock, Peter Stott, Ronnie Rowe, Ollie Clegg, and Zach Burgess rounding out the top 10. There's still mistakes being made by people all around this course. It is not easy at Rowrah when it is raining. It's not even that easy when it's dry, to be honest. But this is a nightmare. The conditions are having just rained. It's now dry. Nobody else is expecting any rain coming. So the track's not going to dry out very easily here because the cloud cover is keeping the sun at bay. And that means that essentially, with the issues that we've got, we have to continue all the way to the dais with a little bit of trepidation. Aaron Alexander, Jake Richardson, and Ike Needham. That's your podium at the moment. But with 3 minutes and 15 seconds to go, plus the additional lap, I don't think Ike Needham can be too comfortable about holding this to the line without a fight. So it's number 7 versus the 1-3-3. Aaron Alexander versus Jake Richardson. And now we're in the traffic. So Aaron Alexander on the Hazo chassis is just doing exactly what he needs to do. Be an interesting one as they work their way through the traffic. Try not to trip over the back markers, gentlemen. Aaron Alexander on the Haas chassis, still going well. Has to power slide up towards the chicane, and that brings Jake Richardson slightly closer to it. Richardson's just pulled the fastest lap of the race out of the bag. A 1:1:083. Now, pick your moment on the back marker. Don't rush in. If you lose the lead, you can still get it back again with some smart manoeuvring. But this is where the 2 leaders are now almost wheel to wheel. Richardson is going to put the man in the lead under some pressure here. Alexander will dive on the inside. He'll slide wide. That's going to be enough for Richardson. It's an invitation, but he can't quite get past on the acceleration. Down the back straight then, along lakeside. Aaron Alexander trying to fend off from Jake Richardson, who is putting him under massive pressure. Out through the hairpin again. Looking for the manoeuvre. Down the drop, making sure they get past the traffic without too much difficulty. Just keep it calm, keep it nice and tidy, and off the road. That is such a difficult moment for our race leaders to reach, because all it takes is one little blade of grass, one little kick up of mud. Of course, the issue is the blue flags are flying, the racers here know that they are going to have to move out of the way and let the others go. This is the likes of Reese Bryant, Tom Hewlin, and Max Manion. Very tricky indeed, but Alexander and Richardson doing their best to go through the traffic without tripping over each other, or any of the back markers for that matter. Dwyer Dales, Jake Richardson just taking his time. Don't need to rush this. We've got a minute to go, but we're going through the traffic. So Jake Richardson knows that Aaron Alexander is the man who's got the pressure on him to make a mistake. I might be able to just pick up the victory if I just hang back a tiny bit from Aaron Alexander. If I get too close and he loses the kart, I'm going to go to the scene of the accident with him. If I hang back a couple of kart lengths, I might get another run at him later in the race. We've got 45 seconds to go. So when they cross the line this time, there's only going to be 1 lap after this next one. 2 to go then as they come through. 2 laps to go for Aaron Alexander, our race leader. But Jake Richardson is right there as they've lapped the entire field up to Chris Fuller in 19th. But now they're going to get to do that. Aaron Alexander has to pick his moment. Could we get a double bubble move here? Because Jake Richardson has now given himself a chance to get close to Aaron Alexander. He'll dive for the inside line. He might use the back marker to box him in. And he's got him! Jake Richardson steals the lead away from Aaron Alexander, who steams in hot into Iredale's and cuts him back across. Good recovery from Aaron Alexander. The battle for the victory has been saved for last. We've run out of time on the timer now. Alexander dives on the inside of a back marker into the stewardesses. Jake Richardson goes with him, and now it's battle royale between 2 men who've been controlling the weekend up front. Aaron Alexander sweeps into St John's, into Sunny, and Aaron Alexander knows he's going to have so much work to keep Jake Richardson back. Richardson is wrestling with him. They bang wheels as they go to paddock. He's got him on the exit. Jake Richardson snatches it in the final hit. Into the last lap we go, and Jake Richardson leads. 1 lap remaining here at Rowrah. What can Aaron Alexander do? Richardson defends through the S's, holds his line. This could be another great chance for Aaron Alexander. He's going to go the long way round, but it's going to be a big chance here for Jake Richardson to fend off the position, and he's got him. Well covered by Jake Richardson, and Aaron Alexander knows he's going to have to do something special to come back at it. Still plenty of lap for Aaron Alexander to catch back up to Jake Richardson. All he's got to do is slam dunk him in the final hairpin, down lakeside, up towards Stewart. Needs to be quicker. He's going to be very strong in this section. This is where Aaron Alexander is really confident in his particular Hazo chassis. Down into the right-hander. St. John's into Sunny. Aaron Alexander starting the work. Now he can pounce on Jake. Jake of opportunity here for Richardson. Richardson's got to defend. What can Aaron Alexander do out of the final turn? There's going to need to be traction. But Jake Richardson's got it. Jake Richardson takes the victory over Aaron Alexander. What a battle in the final in Senior Pro Kart here in Rowrah. 17 drivers complete the race on the lead lap. Ike Needham will come home in 3rd position on his own, ahead of John Hogan and Zach Dawson in the top 5. But what a battle up front between Jake Richardson and Aaron Alexander. They left nothing to chance, they left no doubt, and they pushed all the way to the victory. Magnificent, majestic stuff. It really was sensational. Wow. And so with just 1 race to go, Jake Richardson and Aaron Alexander serve up an absolute dessert of a race after the main course that we saw from Honda R200. That was the pudding from Jake Richardson and Aaron Alexander, and we'll get the coffee and liqueurs from BWR Junior and BWR Senior to close out the race. So in Senior Pro Kart, here is the provisional result then, as several drivers are still crossing the line a second time by the look of it. Jake Richardson takes the victory in front of Aaron Alexander by the smallest of margins, 0.2 of a second. Ike Needham almost 12 seconds back. John Hogan in 4th place from Zach Dawson and Peter Stott. Carl Ruddock in 7th ahead of Ronnie Rowe. Zach Burgess and Ollie Clegg in the top 10. Then Conor McCarthy and James Strabwell. Bradley Rowe and Steve Nichols ahead of Jack Dunbobbin, Matthew Hushby, Riley Bowen and Reese Bright from Tom Hewland. Max Mannion, Chris Fuller, Alfie Wilkes, Freddie Housego, Finley Marshall, Christian Bellamy, Andrea Brahadiu Mustieta, and Dominic Needham. There were 2 retirements in the race, Oliver Hall on lap 6, and we lost Ben Morby on the opening lap. There was a warning given for Bradley Rowe in the 81, so we don't know whether that will give him a penalty or not, down 13th place, but that's not the headline. Senior Pro Kart has been exceptional here, and it's Jake Richardson who's put one over on Aaron Alexander. And so we go to the last race of the day, and it really is going to be a sensational end to proceedings in these conditions. But BWR has been a tough one to predict for most of this season. Don't forget, of course, this is the category where we get to see some really juicy battles between the contenders at the front end of BWR. Alistair Tinker versus John Nuttall. Oliver Greening is the 3rd member of the BWR Senior Brigade this time. And then just 3 BWR juniors, Will Omar, Brandon Edwards, and Danny Elson. If I hadn't been otherwise engaged for the first part of the weekend, I might have wiped the cobwebs off my own race suit and joined them in BWR Senior, because this is a category I love driving in. I've only competed in 1 race around this particular category before. That was at Tattershall a couple of years ago, and I promise you it was so exhausting racing on that particular circuit, much bumpier than this one here at Rowrah, although Rowrah does have a lot of changes of elevation and pitches and swoops in camber. This is going to be the battle for supremacy in BWR. Alistair Tinker, John Nuttall and Oliver Greening. And then in junior, it'll be William Omar, Brandon Edwards, and Danny Elson. And it's going to be in that order. So time for the after 8 mints and the coffees of this particular categories. The UK Kart Series will finish on a very positive and high note. Despite how difficult the conditions have been, we've been treated to some proper battle royales around the course here in the UK Kart Series. So the 6 BWR karts, formerly known as Tillotson T4s, head out onto our circuit. You can see for yourself that even though the sun is trying to poke out, we've still got a very greasy circuit, which doesn't really have a lot of power down opportunities in these conditions. And of course, we might have seen a rather tricky heat earlier on, but this is the race that everybody will want to bring their A game to the table for. Oh, and a spin during the formation lap. I know what that's like. I did that myself when I was racing for the Tillotson T4 UK series at Tattershall a few years ago. I actually spun out on a couple of formation laps. It's quite tricky to get the power down in greasy conditions. Well, I know how embarrassing that feels. I genuinely empathize. But now we're going to get ourselves into position as Danny Elson rejoins the fray in this particular battle. Hopefully everybody's going to start from their original grid positions. So here we are. We have the BWR Juniors behind the BWR Seniors. It's Alistair Tinker, John Nuttall and Oliver Greening. And then William Omar, Brandon Edwards and Danny Elson. We come off the turn and we're racing, and it's a great start as we work our way to the first corner. Alistair Tinker tiptoeing his way in front of John Nuttall, and it's a big run wide there from Oliver Greening. He's going to get swamped by two of the juniors. That's Will Omar and Brandon Edwards getting ahead. So he's going to have to be very careful not to lose ground here to Danny Elson, who dives up the inside and takes it regardless. So Danny Elson in the position, and here comes Oliver Greening back for more. At the inside and very nearly loses the kart altogether there, Oliver Greening. Don't forget, Oliver Greening dealing with a lot of power in that BWR Senior kart by comparison to the junior portion. So it comes down to control much more than usual. Alistair Tinker and John Nuttall not that far away from Will Omar and Brandon Edwards in third and fourth in the race. Oh, and off the road goes John Nuttall. That's a very rare mistake. And in sympathy, Will Omar goes off the road, as does Brandon Edwards. So everybody running wide there at Slip Bend. They weren't expecting it to be quite so slippery, I guess, on the first lap. So everybody goes through. Tinker, Nuttall, Omar, Edwards, Elson, Greening. So this is going to be an 11-minute continuation of this race. 12 minutes plus 1 lap in the finals. So it'll be a tight one all the way to the finish line here as we complete the final. Round 5 of the UK Kart Series is going to be a fascinating one to unpick, and I'm sure that when we get the televised highlights of this race, it's going to be fascinating. Now, if you look on the way out of the hairpin there at Stewart-Essex, you can see just how much mud there is on the far side of the course. And nobody wants to overshoot and miss their braking point and end up there, because you're never getting back onto the racetrack in good time. Tinker still being pursued by John Nuttall. There is Will Omar. He's actually staying with them in good pace here. Then Brandon Edwards, and then Danny Elson ahead of Oliver Greening. So Oliver Greening struggling to match the pace of the juniors in this race at the moment. But then when you're wrestling for traction on a circuit that is not kind to the faint of heart, that is always going to be very difficult. The drone captures the pictures from over the top of the quarry here. And along Lakeside goes Tinker and Nuttall in the lead and in second place of their respective categories. We're going to see some genuinely close quarters racing all the way to the death here, because Alistair Tinker and John Nuttall have a reputation. They have standards to live up to here for us. Even if we don't get masses of karts in the BWR and BWR Junior categories, you can always expect Alistair Tinker and John Nuttall to renew their rivalry and give us gold dust in the closing stages of a race meeting. So John Nuttall's going to steadily continue to work his magic in this race. He is currently on a 55.2, a second back from Alistair Tinker, but all it takes is for Tinker to get it wrong, even slightly, and this race will open up. The junior race sees Will Omar in third, ahead of Brandon Edwards in fourth, and Danny Elson in fifth. But they are first, second and third in their class. That is, of course, the BWR Junior category. Down the braking zone. Neat, tidy on the exit is what is needed here, and I have to say full credit in particular to Will Omar, who is giving Alistair Tinker and John Nuttall a real run for their money. He's keeping fairly similar in terms of pace. Look at these two, then look back. There is Will Omar. Don't forget that Will Omar is a junior, Well, these two up front are BWR Seniors. So great performance so far from Will Omar, who's really getting into the spirit of things up in the lead competitive group. 54, 7.73 for John Nuttall, starting to close up again now on Alistair Tinker. Just when you think he's given his best, he comes back with something stronger. But we are so not done. There is so much that these drivers can still give us in the closing stages of our race day here at Rowrah in Cumbria. John Nuttall is working his magic to try and find that little bit of extra pace. Keeping an eye on my timing screen as well as keeping an eye on the monitors to see how these two racers are putting it together. Bit of a run wide there off the turn, and we can see how tight it's going to get as John Nuttall has done all the homework here on Alistair Tinker. He's going to try and go wheel to wheel with him on the next lap, I'm sure, as Tinker leads Nuttall, but only by 0.2 of a second. Don't forget that Nuttall was a second back just a few laps ago. So Alistair Tinker losing a lot of ground. John Nuttall putting him under some pressure. Either that or Alistair Tinker doesn't really be running on his own, and so he backed off, allowing John Nuttall to have a go at him and get close, because these guys are all about their racecraft. They really want to win, but they want to win with a fantastic battle to put on something for the crowd. And there are many of them here at Rowrah, but there's always a paddock filled to the brim with excited and eager spectators. Alistair Tinker leads John Nuttall by practically a heartbeat. William Omar leading the junior race in BWR. And then Brandon Edwards ahead of Danny Elson and Oliver Greening. We come off the turn, 6.5 to go, plus the additional lap, of course. And John Nuttall on lap 7 has got a chance to go after Alistair Tinker. If he's quicker through the S's, he may get a good run up towards McRae's. If he slingshots that, he'll get a decent charge up towards Iredale's. He's a little bit cleaner, but I don't know if he's any quicker than Alistair Tinker. That is the key factor. But of course, the drivers do go off the circuit and gain an advantage. So you can incur a penalty. So Nuttall all over the back as they think that. More patience needed, I think, from John Nuttall. He knows that Alistair Tinker is there, but he doesn't have to race him until the last lap or so, unless he feels he's got a really good launch out of Sunny Bend, which he does. It's going to be a big defensive tactic from Alistair Tinker, but John Nuttall up the inside takes the lead. Alistair Tinker trying to cut back to the inside line. John Nuttall hits the front here at Rowrah. So now we've got 5.5 minutes to go. The lead has changed. John Nuttall now leads Alistair Tinker, and this is the battle royale, mano a mano, that we always get in BWR Senior. One goes out far right, one goes in tight to get back, and that's going to be John Nuttall losing ground to Tinker once again. Tinker gets back in front. Nuttall has to think about the inside line at Iredale's, but it's not going to work. So Alistair Tinker retakes the lead in this race. You don't need a packed grid of 30 karts, you just need 2 or 3 drivers who know how to push it to the ragged edge. And there's not many in this paddock who know more than Tinker and Nuttall. There's John Nuttall into St John's. Are you really going to commit up the inside there? Fantastic from John Nuttall. Now Alistair Tinker went slow in, fast out. He conceded that corner, but he's going to dine him in again through Sunny and through Paddock Bend. Slow in, fast out is not a bad approach. But John Nuttall now knows he's going to have a target on his back with Alistair Tinker charging after him. With the S's. That was a real brave overtake of conviction there from John Nuttall on Alistair Tinker. Really nicely dealt with. Go. Try not to stand on the throttle too hard on the way out of Iredale's, along Lakeside and up towards Stewart. But John Nuttall is threatening to pull away from Alistair Tinker here. This is not what the number 64 kart wanted to witness in second place in the hands of Alistair Tinker. Because John Nuttall, who not only has the fastest lap of the race, has got himself into the lead, and look at that gap he's pulling. It is daylight, almost 2 seconds already between himself and Alistair Tinker. We've got 3 minutes 45 on the clock, plus the additional lap, and this is a perfect run so far now from John Nuttall. Having got ahead of Alistair Tinker and dealt with him, he now gets the pile on the pressure and disappear away. William Omar still third overall, but the leader in BWR Junior, ahead of Brandon Edwards and Danny Elson, and then in P6 it is Oliver Greening. We're still going to see some great duels and some great moves through the field. But we're running out of time now, and look at this. John Nuttall has just kicked this race into touch. He has started to spread his wings out front, and now he is manoeuvring himself further and further away from Alistair Tinker. I thought we were going to have a battle royale. We did have a nice little duel between them, but John Nuttall has decided, look, I've already duelled with this man several times in 2025. This time, I'm just going to go out and beat him. Hope you can catch me if you can, mate. So John Nuttall ahead of Alistair Tinker. The gap has opened up to 2.5 seconds. John Nuttall is not losing this race if he has any say in the matter at all. William Omar leading in BWR Junior, third overall in front of Brandon Edwards and Danny Elson, with Oliver Greening currently looking at finishing in P6 in the senior category. So difficult to get these conditions right, and they must have gone a slightly different direction on the setup perhaps to keep even the faster of these cars further back. We go out of the stewardesses. It's all been one-way traffic now. John Nuttall has settled into his rhythm out in first position. No real need to break a sweat. Look at Alistair Tinker. He has dropped so far back compared to the early stages when Tinker was trying to pull that clear in front of John Nuttall. But John Nuttall has clearly decided, look, I have settled for second place so often recently. This is my time. This is my moment. So going to try and finish strong here with a dominant victory. Back down the run then to Iredale's for the final few laps of this weekend. Never mind this heat, this final I should say really. And a fantastic performance from all of the contenders in this competition. But all 6 finals have given us something very different indeed. They've given us patience, they've given us discipline, they've given us control, they've given us great scrapping, they've given us chaos as well. But what a sensational end to a fantastic weekend here at Rowrah. We're going to close in on the victory dais, and it's going to be the man up front who gets the job done. And meanwhile, up on the inside line, we've got a great duel further back, as we've got wheel-to-wheel stuff going on between Brandon Edwards and Danny Elson, I think. Hang on a minute, don't tell me that's Will Omar. I think that's Danny Elson getting the move on Brandon Edwards. We'll double check as they come through over the line. It's Will Omar in third position still. But look, a very angry and frustrated Brandon Edwards bangs his hand on the steering wheel as Danny Elson gets in front. Brandon Edwards is looking down at the engine of the kart, hoping that he can get to the finish by the look of it. Brandon Edwards has dropped off the pace big time. His last lap was a 59.3 compared to Will Omar on a 55.8 and Danny Elson on a 57.1. Are we getting a mechanical issue creeping in here for Brandon Edwards? Well, we're going to run short on time to the line, and for John Nuttall, he crosses the line with a few seconds in hand. That means we're going to have 2 laps to go. 3, 2, 1, time's up. So now we've got this lap and the one after it to push our way to the victory dais. And John Nuttall has pulled out 4 seconds on Alistair Tinker. This is not the dominant force we have expected to see from John Nuttall. We thought Alistair Tinker would give him more of a run for his money. In the early stages, he certainly did. Will Omar crossing the line in 3rd place, doing a grand job. Danny Elson crosses in 4th position, having done another decent lap. And Brandon Edwards is going about 0.8 of a second a lap slower. I do wonder if Brandon Edwards' kart is just limping home, pick up the silverware here. But nobody's limping up front in BWR because John Nuttall has taken possession of this race. He knew he had a lot of work to do to get up to Alistair Tinker. He saved a 1.5 second deficit, got ahead and stretched away. This has been one of the finest drives of John Nuttall's career in this paddock. Excellent effort from him as he works his way out of McRae's, down the short stretch to Iredale's, and he will run along Lakeside for the last time. Brilliant effort here from John Nuttall, one of his best drives I've ever seen, and I've seen John Nuttall do many things at the wheel of a go-kart. But on this occasion, he really has surpassed himself. He guides the Tillotson T4 at the lead of the BWR grid in the UK Kart Series Round 5 2025 here at Rowrah in Cumbria. and he is going to become the king of Cumbria. John Nuttall absolutely cleans up here at Rowrah. He goes into paddock then for the last time, and in the BWR final, John Nuttall takes the victory with an absolute masterclass of a drive. Alistair Tinker comes through in second place. He led Eddie Dawes, but second will have to do. We look back to find the winner in the junior category. Here comes Will Omar. He's had a very successful season in BWR Junior, and he will get onto the overall podium and third position in this race, whilst also taking the victory in BWR Junior. Great run from Will Omar. He's happy with that. Second position will go to Danny Elson as fourth position overall. And the last two men will be Brandon Edwards and Oliver Greening. There is Brandon Edwards. Will be kicking himself that he lost ground. Look at it. He's absolutely enraged at the whatever it is that's caused him to lose power. So the final statutory results then, the provisional result for John Nuttall, 5 seconds of Alistair Tinker. What a performance in front of Will Omar, the winner in BWR Junior, ahead of Danny Elson, Brandon Edwards, and the last man home is Oliver Greening, who takes the podium in BWR. And so, folks, we come to the end of another fantastic round of the UK Kart Series, round 5 of 2025. Thank you so much for being with us. We really enjoyed the action here in the slippery, slidey Rowrah. There's more great action to come in 2025. Join us again when the UK Kart Series continues its quest for the titles. From all of us here, from Jake Sanson, trackside at Rowrah, thank you very much for being with us. We'll see you next time. It's bye for now.